Hi, I'm Greg Euland with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. Today I get to sit down with Rich Lupo, Fixed Operations Director at Appletree Honda and Appletree Acura. If you don't know Rich, he's a great guy. He's all over the place, sharing his wisdom, his experience, and I really appreciate you, Rich, coming on with me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Greg. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for having me. Look forward to the conversation today.
For sure. So, Rich, I actually want to start before we started recording. I was joking. I said, "You're not in the store today because that's not something that you would do. Is not be in the store on a weekday." And he said, "Actually, this is my office." So, I love what you have there. But a couple of things. So, when you design an office, well, first of all, you have a microphone in front of your face. So obviously you're on a lot of podcasts. You do a lot of things like this, which I certainly appreciate. I think the industry appreciates having that firsthand kind of boots on the ground perspective. But when you're designing that, you also have a background behind you, right? So you have, cool sign, you have a propeller, you got a Jags helmet. Tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, about the process you went through to decide what's in your office and as a supplement to that, what's in the background when you're on a podcast or doing something like this?
The conversation started between myself and the general manager and one of the owners as we shuffled some offices around. I stayed in the office that I was originally in, but there was some office shuffling around, and I made a commitment at that time to change my office. A lot of times I'll host a customer that's elevated at some level or just needs the amount of time that an advisor doesn't have to go through things in depth and detail. And I took a look at my office, and it was a steel desk, a steel filing cabinet, and some plastic chairs, and it just wasn't an environment that would bring a calming effect and a de-escalating effect for a customer. So I made a commitment to change that environment. So when a customer does come into my office, there's a comfortable couch. There's some comfortable chairs. It's got a warm feeling, and bringing that intangible part to de-escalating a customer or just giving them an environment where they can be relaxed to go over details of a repair, things like that, I thought was very important. One of the fringe benefits of it is I don't have to have a virtual background, and it doesn't show up too bad on a podcast.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I've always thought, anything that's behind you, whether because you're sitting, across from somebody, right, and they're going to notice things, or whether you're on camera and something like this, you kind of need a story to tell around everything that's in sight, right? So you have some cool stuff back there. The propeller is pretty unique. I see some family pictures. Have you had an opportunity? Well, I guess first I do want to hear any stories that you'd like to share about any of those items. But also, have you had any instances where a customer, right, who may be upset has recognized something and you can share that story and there's a common connection there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the couple of two or three things. You mentioned the Jaguar helmet. I'm a Jaguar fan, and go Jags, Duval till we die. That's our mantra, And your team's your team, and it's not always an easy slog. But that's a signed by Tony Baselli when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. So it's pretty special, pretty cool thing. It doesn't always go well with the Carolina fans around here, but. But yeah, I spent about 25 years in living in Jacksonville, and it's kind of my adopted hometown. So, that's part of that. There's a bunch of racing. My father and our extended family, we have a lot of roots in racing, and so there's some racing stuff with my dad and some of the stuff. So there's some of that, and there's definitely connections. There's a lot of racing, and especially when you get over towards Charlotte, there's a lot of NASCAR stuff. So there's definitely some connection there. But more than anything, the biggest thing is that I have pictures of, my family. And it's the biggest part of my life. It is where you can always connect with somebody. It is, I always look at it as the most universal. If there's anything that's universal in this entire world, it is a parent that had, it's a man and woman or, whatever, that have a child, and everybody has those aspirations. It doesn't matter where you are located in the world. If you have a child, you understand that, and it It just so happens that we have a large family, 6 children. And so
Wow.
there's plenty. Yeah. So my wife and I have been married for a long time. We have a lot of kids. And so there's a lot, there's a lot of connection there with people that have kids. And so it definitely gives you common ground when you're talking with a customer, and they are able to see you as something that is human, brings a human aspect to it instead of just that car guy that, we're going to come in here and fight in his office and, scrabble over hundreds of dollars and, my oil change took too long or whatever. And so it definitely provides connection. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love the thoughtfulness and intentionality behind it. But no, everything looks great, and no, it's you did a great job with the office. I'm glad to hear that it's had some benefits too of just being able to soften those conversations, because we all know, I mean, it's part of the job. But it's no matter how many times you do it, it's never fun, right? It's never all right. Let's go. So you need to be able to have those conversations in a delicate way, and you want. You want the customer to leave feeling like they were heard and taken care of and wanting to come back the next time. So,
yeah, 100%.
No, that's great. All right. Well, Rich, I wanted to talk about, I mean, there's so many topics we could talk about. You're such a seasoned vet and you have so much knowledge. But one of the things I wanted to start with today was what you're doing with kind of your bench program. So you've done this, when I say bench program, it's kind of like bring next man up, right? How do you train people essentially? So you've done it with technicians for years. You're starting to do it with advisors. But can you lay out kind of what you've designed, what you've developed, and what you're executing in your store, and then we can get into results. But just start with kind of what the program looks like and how you built it.
Well, I have to always, when I talk about this, give credit to our fellow colleague, Ed Roberts. Yeah. He definitely changed some of my thinking on it, and took some of his best practices and adapted them to fit what we do here. And so there was we overhauled the process. I can tell you, we hit rock bottom like 6 months. I've been here about 4 years, and about 6 months after I got here, we found ourselves in a position where I had to come in on a Saturday and change oil because we had nobody. It was just such high turnover, and we just couldn't get a handle on it. It had been that way historically prior to me getting here, and it's just something that needed to get fixed. And so we made a commitment, not that I'm above changing oil, but it was just it became a point where I'm like, this is something that needs to get fixed. And so we really took a hard look at it. And I would say that the very first thing we did is we looked at the candidates. Why didn't we have staff, and why did we have the turnover? And we targeted our recruitment and took a look at our Indeed ads and things like that, and how we went out into the world. And we were doing what most everybody does. We had ads out for lube techs and things like that. And, if you can fog a mirror, we'll give you a shot. And it struck me at that point that we were advertising for the wrong candidate. And so we overhauled that process. We looked at and changed all of that and said, we're looking for entry-level technicians, laid out, you're going to start an express, and here's exactly what you can expect from us. Here's what we expect from you, and if you want to be in the automotive industry, if you want to be a technician, here's an entry point for you. And immediately it changed our candidates. We started getting kids that were, getting ready to graduate from tech school. And then we started getting applicants from other people, the people that were currently employed at other locations, whether it was aftermarket locations, the proverbial Jiffy Lube or whatever iteration that is local here, and or other dealers that had been, a lube tech for 2 years, and there was no path forward, and they were frustrated. And so when we provided that path forward for them and advertised to them, we got a much higher quality candidate. So that was the first step.
Can I pause you right there? Because I think that it sounds so logical. It sounds so simple, right? You talk to the person that you want to get, but it can also be scary, especially for somebody who does have high turnover. And it's like, gosh, we need to get bodies in here because
Mhm.
we gotta have people to change oil on Saturdays, right? Like
Yep.
we can't be super selective because we need bodies. But when you explain it the way that you did, my takeaway was yeah, you do, but do you want to fix the problem or do you want to be just in this cycle perpetually? And it's
Correct.
probably going to hurt a little bit, right? You're not going to get as many applicants. I assume the number, probably the volume of applicants went down, but your quality, it sounds like, went up significantly.
It did. And, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that hiring the wrong people impacts the staff, the front line, more than it does a guy sitting in this chair in this office. And so my experience led me over the years, I've come to understand this. And if you go to, in this case, your tech staff and say, "Hey, listen, we're gonna dig in on this, and we're gonna try to find the right people and build this thing right, but it's gonna take a little bit of time." Would you rather me hire a bunch of people that don't have any business doing it and have all of the repercussions from that, or are you guys willing to take a little bit of a little bit more load, take care of the overflow from this until we can get this thing righted? And that's the easiest decision that those guys ever will make for you. It goes the same thing for advisors. If you've got 10 advisors and you're looking for one, you can't get that one or two. You've got 8 at your core, but there's just 2 that keep cycling in and out. Hey guys, if we run lean for a little while, you're going to have to write a little bit harder and go a little bit harder. But having the wrong advisor in a lane just creates chaos that everybody else, it affects the other advisors more adversely by having somebody in there that's not qualified, not ready to do it versus let's wait, let's find the right person. And to a T, I've never had an a group of advisor or technicians say, no, hire the unqualified person and make our life worse. Now we'll write an extra few ROs a day. We'll fix an extra couple cars. We'll take the waiter oil change until you get the right people in. So we went to our technicians and our advisors and said, this is going to be a minimum of 6 months to get this thing halfway right. And, are you okay with that? And, it's just we're going to have to pull a little bit harder, because we're going to have to share a bigger piece of the load for a while until we can get this righted. And everybody was, generally very receptive to that, in that we're going to be proactive enough to actually solve that issue.
So Rich, how have you been able to develop in yourself and in your team that patience? Because, again, you explain it and we talk through it and it's like, well, yeah, that makes complete sense. But when you're in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the moment and you're that technician or you're that advisor and things are crazy and they're always crazy and it's starting to get frustrating, or maybe it's been frustrating for a while and it's like, just fix it. And, you talk about 6 months or you talk about 12 months. And for somebody, especially a younger person, right? 6 months or 12 months, heck, that's 25 or 50% of the time that I've been here. Like, I don't want this to just keep going on and dragging on. It can be difficult, I think, to have that perspective at any level, but certainly for somebody who doesn't have, 25, 30 years of experience. So how have you been able to develop that patience in both yourself and your team where you get that buy-in?
So the team buy-in is actually, I didn't have to create that. The legacy of not having it cured creates that patient. When the second part of that is clearly communicating what you want to do, what your goals and what your intention are to this team. And when you say, this is what we're going to do, we actually have a plan and, this is how we're going to do it. The legacy of that chaos that's been going on for, historically, I guess, or the legacy of that chaos, when you actually present a plan, communicate it, that sorry, that patience for them is built in. It's automatic. It's almost to a T. Everybody goes, so you're going to cut out all of this craziness and we're going to make a real solution. We're down for that.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious, do you write it down? Like, do you send it out in an email or in a memo, or is it all verbal communication?
Probably send out, if you were going to give a speech, you'd put the highlights down and then fill it in as you were talking.
Right.
So definitely send out some precursors and then have a meeting and really talk about it and drill down where people have questions.
Okay. No, I find that interesting. Written communication is such an effective method. But then to your point, you also have to have a dialogue. So I think that blend, to me, that's the right answer. It sounds like that's the path that you went as well. But having that, there's something about writing it down. I think it does two things. One, it provides clarity for you, right? As the leader who's delivering this message and preparing this plan, it makes you truly think through it. Because to write it, you kind of got to answer the questions, right? And then, so it gives you clarity. It also provides clarity for your team. And then when you follow that up with a conversation, it makes it human. So I think, that's a great framework. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, just to add to that, one of the reasons I found that the written doesn't come is because when you provide that written plan and provide that, that service advisor, that technician, whoever is involved in that communication now has a piece of accountability to bring to you. And so if you never send it, you just talk about it, then it's a little bit nebulous to get held accountable.
Sure.
It's you can always move the goalpost on it if it's not written down. But when you put it in writing, they can print out an email and bring it to you and say, you said you were going to do this. And so you are providing, even subconsciously, accountability for yourself when you write it down and send it out. And that's a confidence builder.
Yeah, you're right. You're spot on. Okay, so sorry, I've kind of forced you to bounce all over in this walkthrough here, but
it's fine.
So you talked about changing your recruiting, right, and who you're recruiting. You've talked about getting buy-in from your team and having a plan in place and communicating effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So what was kind of what are some other key factors to building this bench program that you've built?
Well, then the next part of it, once we figured out that we were attracting the wrong candidates. Then the next thing, when we went out there and said, well, we're going to put this out there that we want entry-level technicians, we had to create a program that said from day one when you start, here's what it looks like, 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road, and give them a very defined path, expectations, and both from us and for them, and then where the rubber hits the road is actually doing those things. And so when we bring somebody in today after having been doing this for a couple of years, I can walk them through the shop and say, I can point out 6 or 7 people that have been through that program that are now productive line technicians that started with, virtually zero experience or, had been in 6 months at a Jiffy Lube or something like that. And now they're fully certified and if not mastered, near master certification and making money. And so once the ball gets rolling, it gets really easy. But in the early days, we had to we said we're going to, we told this person we were going to, make them the next level and do these things. And we had to do that. And actually probably the very first test case, our crash test dummy, it was challenging to live up to those standards that we set for ourselves and the expectations we set for that person. But it proved out well. That person has been with us 3.5 years now, and I would say that they are very, very productive and an integral part of our our full technician staff at this point.
Yeah, that's great. So at any given time, how many of these folks kind of in your bench program, right, your lube techs, how many of these folks do you have as part of your team at any given time?
Roughly 10.
Okay.
So, there's 2 tiers. There's an entry level tier where, they're new to us and we're new to them and they're doing very basic services. And then after, 6, 8 months of doing it, and they've got a lot. They've proven themselves to us. They understand our system, and they've got a lot of certifications. They've been doing testing for 6 or 8 months, and they've got 150 virtual tests done, online tests done with Honda. They're at a decent level of certification. We move them into a tier 2 where they're doing some of the more advanced things, the tires and the alignments and the fluid exchanges and things like that. So that's one of the next tiers. So we've got roughly about 10 people at any given time in different points in that process.
So in your program, do you allocate training time for them, like during the day where you're paying them to do training, or are they doing that on their own after hours? How do you manage that?
They're on the clock, so they're the majority of their pay is hourly at that level, at that time. And when they're not fixing a car, they're on the clock, and we're paying them while they're sitting in front of their PC doing testings. They have access, and some of them do take it home and do it at home. But the majority of them, when they have downtime, they flip right on to the PC and start doing it. And I'm perfectly okay with it. It's a strategy. Sometimes the GM will walk by and go, "You got 7 guys in there and there's no cars in there. Are they all sitting in front of computers?" Yep. Okay. Well, we're moving on, and we're moving forward with our process. So it is a financial investment. I mean, 100%. And so the overages in labor, we look at that as training and a future investment, not just unwanted overtime or unproductive hours, unapplied labor, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that early on, was that a conversation that you needed to have frequently with your GM or with your dealer, where it's like, okay, listen, I get it, but this is why we're spending that money? I mean, was that a frequent conversation? Was it a difficult conversation?
It was not difficult. I had built enough trust that, give me enough rope to hang myself, or we'll see how it goes. But if you look at the recruitment cost of trying to bring relocate and bring in, some guy or gal with, 10 or 15 years of master level experience, and the recruitment costs, the onboarding costs, all of those things, and then are they actually going to stay around and stick? We make that same level of investment, but we do it across multiple people, and we do it consistently. So, okay. But it's not without cost. You have to be dedicated to the program. But in the last 2 years, two and a half years, we probably graduated out of that 8 or 9 technicians. And so if I came to you and said, I'm going to grow you in the next 24 months, I'm going to grow you 8 technicians, flat rate technicians, and it's going to cost, a couple thousand a week in extra labor over the course of a couple of years, you would challenge me to say that I could, that's a possibility to get that done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I imagine one of your proof points at this point also is retention. I assume these folks are pretty loyal to you. If you've invested that into them, you've kept your word, you've helped them grow, you've provided the training. I would imagine that you get some pretty loyal technicians by doing this as well.
We have almost to a T, 100% retention. We lost one person through over the last 3 years of doing this. We've lost one person that we made that investment in, and it was actually probably as much our fault because we didn't follow our process as tightly as possible, and it led to this technician not being in the right position. And it caused him to, make a change instead of staying with us. And when we did a postmortem on it, we made mistakes along the way too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, that's great to hear though, that you have, almost everybody staying. So Rich, I love what you're doing there. This concept of tech development, you made a statement early on, because this isn't, I don't think, and not to take anything away, I don't think it's necessarily unique, this concept and this idea, right? Everybody's trying to do something around this, or at least they've thought about it. Mm-hmm. But early on, you said, I don't remember the exact phrase, but basically best practice adaptation, right? So you hear best practices and you can apply them, but you have to make them your own. You have to make them what works for your
Oh
store,
yeah.
for your community, for your
Mhm.
team. And that's really, I think, where the rubber meets the road, and what's probably made you so successful with where you're at right now at Appletree Honda and Appletree Acura with this program is you didn't just try to plug and play something else or plug and play something that maybe you did at another store, another location. It was, okay, where are we at in this store, and how do we apply the same principles but make it work for us and our team?
In a more broader sense of it, um, we try to punch above our weight class. I mean, we have a really great business. I mean, it's a local business, family owned, 50 years, 50 couple of years. But we don't, and we have all the resources that we're ever going to need for the size of business that we are, but we are not a Lithia, AutoNation, a Hendrick, things like that. So we don't have billions of dollars in resources and revenue. And so the mechanism, one of the most important things to be able to punch above your weight is thoughtfulness and being very intentional about where we place our resources. And when we do make that decision, and is it well thought out, and executing it and bringing that success to our little hamlet here in Western North Carolina. So being intentional and making sure that allocating the resources that you have are well thought out gives you a mechanism to keep up with the bigger guys that we're in the marketplace with.
Yeah.
Charlotte's 2 hours from here, and Charlotte is where Rick Hendrick's at. We got big players in our market. We've got Fields as a big player in the space, and they're here in the market. The Anderson Automotive Group has expanded widely over the last couple of years. So we've got players all around us that are have tons of resources in multiples more than we have. But we've got to punch above our weight class and keep up with them. And so having intentionality and being thoughtful in what you do and adapting those processes and truly making them your own is the key to doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And a part of that too, and what you're doing, I've heard you talk about, Rich, and we talked a little bit earlier on today before we started recording about comparables in retail. And when you think about punching above your weight, and you think about the competitive landscape that you're in that you just described, in automotive and in a lot of retail industries, Amazon is the easy comparable, right? How do we do what Amazon's doing so we don't become Barnes and Noble, right? Or fill in the blank. I mean, that's the example that's given a lot. But you were talking about, is Amazon really the right comparable for us as a car dealership, as an auto retailer, right? Is Amazon the right comparable? So share a little bit where your head's at on that, and maybe we can see where this goes. But I want you to share kind of what you're thinking in that world.
So we talked a little briefly before we started recording, and it's not fully developed, but it's a string I'm pulling on. It's a piece of yarn I'm pulling on right now to help me define this, because you did mention Barnes and Noble, right? So Amazon came into existence in a pure digital sense. Barnes and Noble was brick and mortar. Barnes and Noble was not able to make a good transition into the digital marketplace, right? And so it's a rarity if you see a Barnes and Noble at this point. And it's very easy to make a comparison to what we're doing and want to emulate or imitate what Amazon has done. And I don't think that that's the correct place to look. And what I've been really looking at lately is what Walmart has been doing. There's a lot more parallels between Walmart and our business than there is with Amazon. Nobody's ever been to an Amazon store. They don't have brick and mortar locations. Their concept from day one was never that. Walmart, on the other hand, is very similar in that they have tens of thousands of retail brick and mortar locations, but they have to keep up with the market pressures that Amazon puts on them. And so they have to find a way to protect their retail business, those brick and mortar, physical places where you can go in, take a shopping cart and put a box of Cheerios in the shopping cart and check out. At the same time, they have to bring that digital experience into existence to keep up with the changing retail environment. And so we are facing the same challenge where we've got brick and mortar, and we've got expensive real estate, just like Walmart. We've got big buildings. We've got all this investment. We've got all this legacy of people coming in to get their oil changed and all those things. And as we look, for me, looking at what we're doing in the mobile service space, there's a lot of overlap of what they're doing with Walmart Plus, trying to take and meet the customer at their home and bring that Walmart experience, or not the Walmart experience, to the customer at their home, in the same way that we're going to, try to change your oil in the driveway and rotate your tires in your driveway. And there's no good parallel for that with Amazon. So for me, trying to be, as we talked about, punching above your weight and being very intentional and thoughtful about what you do, the model that we're looking more closely is Walmart and Walmart Plus, not Amazon.
Yeah.
And so I think that the ideas and all the nuances of it, I don't have fully developed, but that is where my headspace is right now, trying to differentiate Amazon versus Walmart and Walmart Plus, how that translates into our brick and mortar here at Apple Tree versus putting vans on the road and going meeting the customer. And there's definitely some space between Amazon and Walmart because of the just from the inception, it was a digital marketplace, and protecting that retail business that Walmart has, and also reaching out to their customer. If you look at what Kroger has done, Kroger definitely went all the way one way, all the way back the other way, and they've settled on a in-store app for customers. They get discounts in store versus, online ordering and delivering versus, stopping by to pick up something that's been pre-purchased. And Kroger has had a big, it's a very storied path that they've taken to get to where they are right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. And, a couple of those examples, I think what I'm taking away as I'm listening is a lot of it relies on optionality, right? Because what I consider convenient and what you consider convenient probably aren't the exact same thing. There's some similarities, but they're probably not the exact same thing, right? And even what you consider convenient at 5:30 p.m. this evening and what you consider convenient at 9:30 p.m. this evening might be two different things, right? If you're heading home and you want to stop and grab something at Walmart and you can do that easily, that's more convenient than ordering it on your phone and waiting for it to be there tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So, I think having those options is where, we as dealerships and as auto retailers can really win. Because to me, this isn't binary, right? This isn't, okay, we're going to do it online or, remote and do it in their driveway, or we're going to do it at our store. This is additive, right? We're adding to what we're capable of doing. We're adding to our capacity. That additive nature is going to come from the optionality of what's convenient to the person at that time.
It's the same struggle. Yes. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And along those same along those same line of thinking, one of the concerns that you always have is, well, I'm going to put a van on the street and I'm going to go service a customer that was, going to come into our store anyway. And so are we just displacing work that would be in our brick and mortar to do it in somebody's driveway? And on the face of it, that doesn't look like a very good business plan to spend a bunch of money on a bunch of vans to go service vans or cars that were going to come into your service drive either way. Right. And doesn't seem very smart. But then, just like you said, well, sometimes it's convenient to stop by and grab a loaf of bread at 5:30. And sometimes it's easier to sit on your couch and at 9 o'clock at night and order a loaf of bread for tomorrow. Right. And so meeting the customer where they want to be met is probably the thing that's dictating retail at this time more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. So as you're thinking through this Walmart comparable, right, and trying to maximize what you're doing, is there anything so far that's stood out to you as far as, okay, how do we need to handle, the customer that's in store? How do we need to handle the customer that wants, remote service? Does it start where, and I don't know how far along, kind of how far down the path you are, if you've gotten there yet, but, kind of where it starts. Is it at the first interaction? Like what, I don't know, anything standing out to you so far?
So on the front end of when we're selling a car, there's an EMI, an early manager intro, right?
Okay.
So when we look at that process, that the EMI gives that customer, the manager getting involved early will lay out options for that customer, probably maybe more clearly or at a different level. And so introducing those options at the front end of the transaction with our service customer, we're really working hard to drive web appointments. And if we can get you to hit our website and make an appointment, or, digitally through our website, mobile app, PC, whatever, we can introduce those things to you and give those options and lay those out to you in the first part of the process.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of goes back to your point about communication, right? And it's internal and it's external, but when you communicate effectively and kind of present those options, it really gets the ball rolling and sets the stage for a great, customer relationship, hopefully for forever, right?
Sales sells the first one and service will sell the next three if you do a good job, right? And
That's right.
It's never been more relevant now. I mean, because these cars are aging and they're, the cost of the vehicles, the cost of the financing, it's making repairs a more viable option. And, we're plus 70,000 miles on our average car right now. And those are, we're in uncharted historic territory. There are times when we see it creep up almost to 80,000 miles on an average service visit. That kind of retention for a dealer, and because those are going to be older cars, that level of retention and that level of miles being your average vehicle is paradigm changing for our business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you think about, what that does to your ticket size just in general, right? When your mileage is higher, you're naturally going to get more repair work than maintenance work. Like that's just going to happen. Not to oversimplify it, but it's got a lot of positives. So yeah, I mean, you want to sell more cars as a dealer, but like having those higher mileage vehicles on the road still and being able to service them, there's a lot of positives to that.
Well, if the customer keeps coming back with that car and it's, coming up on 8-9 years old, and they still have a relationship with our service department, there's such a high likelihood that they're going to buy another Honda or another Acura in our case, because we see that customer a couple times, 2, 3, 4 times a year for 10 years. That loyalty is so baked into that transaction that the crossover of replacing that with the same manufacturer vehicle is almost a done deal, unless we screw it up some way, in that transaction in service or when they go to shop for a new one. If we drop the ball, but if we don't drop the ball, there's almost 100% certainty that they're going to stay loyal to the brand.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Rich. Well, I want to be super respectful of your time. I could probably talk to you for hours. And I think we have at some point, over the years. But anything before we hop off? I mean, anything that we haven't talked about that you want to touch on, or any questions I haven't asked that I should have?
Just close the loop on that with the higher mileage and the repair mix becoming more repair versus maintenance, and the mix changing a little bit, and the ticket averages are going high, and the margin pressures and all those kinds of things. One of the places that our business is headed to is financing and short-term financing for our customers. And there are a lot of options out there in the market. And if I was going to say something, closing that loop in offering those short-term financing and really making a part of your process. When you come in to buy a new car, one of the things you really consider is, how much you're going to finance and what the rates are and things like that. Right. And so that's an integral part of the sales process. Putting short-term financing at the front end of every transaction, offering it to every customer, is going to alleviate some of those concerns that the customer is going to have with the higher ticket averages. So I think that's a very important part of our business going forward.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. And so for you, because my assumption is you see higher close rates, right? If you offer that financing option, especially when you get up into four figures, right? $1,000, $2,000, and it's easy to get there. It's easy to get there and on a service ticket, right? If you got right. So, but once you get there, for a lot of consumers, it's really difficult to say, "Yep, today." Right, like right now, yeah, no problem. Yep, let's $1,600. Great. That's a big ask for a lot of consumers. So my assumption is, when you offer that financing and it's $50 a month instead of $1,600 right now, your close rate goes up. Is that accurate in practice for what you've seen?
It is, and it also leads to higher customer satisfaction because you're providing those options. And then $1,600 up front in one shot, or 4 payments of $400 over the next 4 months. Those are two entirely different scenarios for the consumer. Right.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. I think there's, if dealers aren't offering that, I think you're right. It's almost like low hanging fruit to keep those customers happy, like you just described, but also, probably get more of that business. I mean, in theory, you're gonna close more of that because you have an easier pill to swallow for the customer.
And making it a consistent part of the process. Not just, hey, not offering it. I'm handing you a $3,000 bill, and by the way, I've got finance options. But hey, how are you doing? Thanks for coming in. And putting that into the first part of every process, because you can't prejudge what the car is going to need and what the consumer has in their checking account at that very moment. So putting that in the front end of the process. By the time we get a multi-point done and get an estimate to a customer, they may have, they're likely to have already gone through and, they probably know in their mind what they're looking at before we give them an estimate. Right. They know they need 4 tires, and they probably shopped, and they know 4 tires is $900, and you're going to put alignment and it's going to need a set of brakes, and it's going to be, $1,600. They're probably already in their mind got $1,600 in their mind. And when you present that right up front, they're likely on their phone. If they don't already have some of that short-term financing lined up, they're going to be on their phone, and it's going to be very easy for them to say yes to 4 payments of $400 than $1,600.
Yep. You're right. All right, Rich. Well, again, I appreciate your time. We kind of, I feel like we went deep on a couple of topics, which is great. I love doing that. But we'll obviously have to do this again soon. I'm sure I'll see you at some point in the near future. But always appreciate talking to you. I appreciate what you do for the industry and sharing your knowledge and experience. So until next time, I hope you have a great afternoon, and hopefully you don't have to have any of those tough conversations in your office today.
Just a part of it, but hey. Greg, thank you. And I can't thank you so much for what you do. Every time I interact with you, it's always pleasure. And, you are a part of the reason why we do business with Reynolds. Been very helpful over the years. So I want to thank you for that. And look forward to catching up with you soon at some event. I'm sure we're going to run into each other.
I'm sure. All right. Thanks, Rich. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Man, I could spend days with the one and only Rich Lupo. I love talking with that guy. He's got so much knowledge, so much experience. I hope you took a lot away from that conversation. I know I certainly did. Before we hop off, don't forget you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.